So today I just want to give you a quick shop update and show you some of the upgrades and changes that I've made since the last video. Now when I moved in here, I knew I wanted to do things in phases. And phase one was getting the lights, the electrical, the flooring, soundproofing, all that stuff in place. Now we're well into phase two. What wound up happening was my mom was in from out of town helping with the kids, and I had a little bit of extra time. So I dipped my toes in and started to do a little project, and one thing led to another and yada, yada, yada. I now have phase two well underway. So as you can see behind me, quite a few changes have taken place and I want to bring you up to speed. Let's take a look. Now I've got this wide view to show you something I switched around. For some reason, and I still haven't quite figured it out, having the assembly table on this side with my clamps on this wall was very congested feeling. It worked, but I just felt like it could be better. Moving it over here and essentially switching these two sides around. So workbench went over here, assembly table over here, and now my hand tools are all distributed along this wall and my clamps are on this wall. Something about this just gave me more room. I actually have more pathway room between the tools. And again, I'm not 100% sure, it's just the shape and the orientation of these pieces that made this work. And it is so much better. Now, it's a minor change, but it had a big impact. All right, so that was the first thing that I did. Now, as part of that, all these clamps that were on this wall needed to find a home over here. And obviously, you can't put clamps on a garage door, at least no way that I know of. So part of the ultimate plan was to box in the non-functional garage door and then skin it with T111. This is outdoor exterior siding that works great in the shop. It looks very cool. And if you use, like I did, a little bit of medium walnut, I think it's called, Danish oil, you get a little bit of protection and you get a brown color that helps to tone down the orange and yellow effect. And you might like that, I don't. I just wanted to tone it down, especially on video. I don't think that looks very good, but this looks awesome. Okay, so this is just a 2x4 basic framed wall. I didn't record it because I don't want anyone criticizing my poor construction craftsmanship. I'm terrible at it, but I know enough to get the job done. I know enough to be dangerous. And basically, you build the wall and then put it in place and anchor it. And basically, because you've got all that framework around the garage door, there's plenty of drill surface and screw surface. So I took the Simpson Strong Tie right angles and small blocks of wood and created these angle blocks that would anchor this thing on the sides as well as the top. And then on the bottom, I just have a pressure treated plate and a little bit of liquid nails. Okay, so if I need to, this thing can come out in about 5 minutes. So if we ever had to sell the place, this is not going to pass code. Certainly, we would have to make sure this comes out to sell the house. So the good thing about using this kind of siding instead of something like drywall is that you could put a screw anywhere. Okay, so if I'm putting really heavy stuff, I'm gonna go for a stud, but stuff that's medium and light, you could pretty much put screws anywhere along this wall, and it's so functional. Absolutely love it. I do have a little bit of insulation in here. I figured I'm building it, why not just think it's like R13, and just every little bit helps in here. I also was able to create a shelf at the top, which is fantastic, just extra storage space. And I still haven't fully organized everything, but you can see it's, pretty much ready to go. I got King's beautiful, massive clamp on display over here. And of course, you might notice a change in the parallel clamp organization. A couple months ago, I dismantled my old clamp rack, which is what we have here, in favor of Rockler's new clamp racks. And these are supposed to be a little bit more efficient because now instead of having a single clamp taking across the width like this, you're stacking them away from the wall. So you could nest them in there and theoretically get a lot more clamps organized into the same width of space. The problem is it takes up more space out into the shop this way. So depending on what kind of spare room you have in your shop, you may or may not want to go that route. But what I will recommend is if you do this and you're pressed for space, you're probably better off making your own. And ultimately, this is why I pulled back from these. These are great, but they're also meant to accommodate multiple types of clamps. So they give you a little bit more space between each clamp than you really need. So if you were to make this yourself, you could fit one of two things. You could either not come out from the wall quite as far and fit the same number of clamps. Or if you do come out this far, you could fit more clamps in that space. So with my tight arrangement here, I really wasn't comfortable taking up that much floor space, which is essentially what happens. Yes, it's wall space, but if the clamps are hanging down this far, essentially you're eating up floor space, and I just didn't have enough to sacrifice. So I went back to this old system, looks fine, it's doing the job, but it actually is more efficient for me. So I will be selling these. I've got like 4 or 5 of them. So they're good, just not right for me. But I think this definitely works better for my situation. Now on the workbench side, you could see massive changes over here. Basically everything came off the wall. T111 is attached right to the drywall with a series of screws into the studs behind the drywall, which now makes this stuff incredibly secure. And once again, finished with a little bit of that Danish oil, and it really spruces it up nicely. So this gave me so much wall storage space. And one of the things I wanted to do, while I like my tool cabinet, my small hand tool cabinet that we made on the show, I've always felt that it's better to have the tools on the wall. Now people think, oh, it's gonna get dusty. Well, it's a shop, you know, stuff gets dusty. What are you gonna do? But ultimately, I like the idea of being able to go, boom, here's my hand plane, then have to open a set of doors and then have a tool cabinet that's coming, once again, off of the wall and consuming floor space. So for me, if you have the wall space to spare, having the tools out on display not only looks cool, but it makes them much more accessible and easier to get to. And if you're afraid of dust in a wood shop, getting on your tools, then I think you have other problems to worry about. But ultimately, things are held on the wall with some really cool little doodads that I made up just using scrap material, trying to get creative with it. Some things are just held up there with screws. It doesn't have to be, you know, super elegant. It just has to be secure. I've got my drills are actually stored nicely. I was able to use my drill storage thing that I built on the show years ago. And I have all of my chargers up on the wall now. So everything is just much more concise and easy to reach, and I just don't need as much storage space as I needed before. The way this is spread out, it's kind of interesting how that worked. So for me, this is the way to go. Again, I cannot say enough good things about this T111. So with the temperatures warming up a little bit, I was able to finally install 2 fans. These are just simple 3-blade, quote-unquote, industrial fans from Home Depot, but they're just very generic looking, and that's kind of what I wanted. They were about 99 bucks a piece, and the 2 of them are connected together to a single switch. Now, something I didn't realize is you just can't put 2 fans on one switch. You have to get one that has the right amperage that's rated to control 2. I don't need separate controls for those fans. I just need a single circuit, both of them going at the same speed. So I found this one online, and I'll give you a link to that resource in case you need one too. Now, I also installed Oneida's Dust Sentry, which is their dust level detection system. So you have a sensor that's installed in the bin, and you can kind of control how far down you want it to sense, just how quickly you want that alarm to go off. And it's not an audible alarm, it's just visual. So it's a red light that blinks, and this way it's kind of a direct line of sight throughout the shop. If I'm working on the big dust producers, I can just kind of look up and glance at that, and if I see the light going off, I know I got to stop. Otherwise, I could get a backfill into the filter chamber, which really sucks. But so far, that seems to be working pretty good. Another thing I changed here that you might notice is I downsized my drum from a 55 to a 35 gallon. This facilitates having this thing on a rolling stand. It makes it much easier to get to the garbage can. And the reason I couldn't do that with the 55 is because it hits this bottom section of the stand here. Now, they sell extensions, and I could jack this thing up a couple more inches and it would have fit, but I started to think, do I really want a 55-gallon can of sawdust to have to deal with? And ultimately, I don't want to have to lift this thing to accommodate that extra height extension. So this worked really well, downsized to 35, and I also have this plastic insert that goes in here, and you basically put a plastic bag in and put the insert in, and that prevents the bag from being sucked up. So this allows me to bag all of my dust in case I need to dispose of it in the regular garbage. So I think I'll be much happier with this setup. Another change I made is I no longer have this loose hose for compressed air. I've got one of these Goodyear retractable units that works really well, swivels back and forth, and has a 50-foot hose. And the final change is I swapped out my Jessam router table for an Incra setup. And this will be a topic for another video because I think it's interesting to discuss why I did not like having an Incra setup at my table saw, but why I do like having it at the router table. But one of my favorite things about this setup, dust collection, baby. So I've got this going into a collection at the bottom, which splits off and also collects from the fence, and it doesn't need a shop vac. This whole thing connects with the 4-inch flex hose into the primary system. So that's gonna be pretty darn cool. All right, so that's all I have for you today. Good luck with organizing your shops. Take care.